Hey guys, this is Rensy from Nerdstomper.com, and I'm going to be talking to you a bit about the 4.0 patch. In this first video, I'm going to give you an overview of some aspects of the patch, followed by an overview of the new rogue talents and abilities. I'll be making another video later about the specific new talent trees, showing some battleground clips of all three specs: Assassination, Combat, and Subtlety. For this video though, I'm just going to be talking about mostly talents, the specifics of the changes and all that, and my insight on some of those things. In many ways, the 4.0 patch is all about the combination of simplifying some aspects of the game, like stats, while also giving you more enjoyable and fun choices with your character instead of having to stick to one cookie-cutter build or gear setup. You'll see that in the way they change glyphs, which I'll talk about in the next video, and you'll also see that in the way that talents, there's a lot less required talents that give you a flat increase. There's a lot more fun and interesting talents. I'll talk specifically about what glyphs I think are good for what specs and why in my second video, I think, when I talk about the playability of each spec. And I'm going to show myself playing some battlegrounds just for kind of, fun screwing around and checking out the new abilities, and not really this is how you play, but just kind of showing the generalities of the specs. When you log in, you'll notice there are a ton of changes to the user interface in general. Just about every tab has been changed. I'm not going to go over every specific change that 4.0 has to offer in regards to video settings and little UI changes and the like. The goal of this video is to give you an overview of some of the big 4.0 general changes, and then offer a strong focus on the changes to the rogue class, specifically talents, in this video. This video is not going to be entirely comprehensive, but I think it should be a good starting place for 4.0. One of the first things you'll notice when you log on is your gems might have changed. Stats were simplified so that many of them no longer exist. If you had armor pen gems, you will now have crit rating gems. If you had attack power gems, they got converted into agi gems. There are a lot of things that new stat systems impact, that the new stat system impacts, and a lot of new mechanics based on the new stat system, like reforging, for example, which I'll talk about in a little bit. As far as the new stat system goes, everything's pretty much been changed, and they introduced a new stat called Mastery, which I'll talk about in a little bit. But basically, attack power was converted to agility, spell power converted to intellect, mana per 5 is converted to spirit, defense converted to dodge, sometimes parry, and armor penetration is generally converted to critical strike because the stat's been eliminated. So if you logged in and you had a bunch of armor pen gems, they got changed to crit gems, which kind of suck for rogues because, we don't want crit gems at all. We want agi gems if we're going to get crit. Crit rating gems pretty horrible. So I went and changed all my gems back to agility from attack power, which is fine with me. From armor pen. I always hated armor pen gemming and just the concept in general. I just never really liked it. I thought it created balance issues because of different things with scaling and stuff like that, and stacking of PvE gear, where some rogues could do 2k ambushes to warriors, and some could do 6k if they had access to the right gear. I mean, that's just the nature of in the game in some ways, but I like this way a lot better. So anyways, I'm going to start talking about reforging now. With the new reforging system, you go to this vendor here, you can see the Highborn, and you pull up this menu that says Reforge, and you drop an item in it. And basically what it does is, if you quote Blizzard, is 40% of any one secondary stat on an item can be allocated to add a new secondary stat to the item. The stat being added cannot already exist on the item. An item cannot have more than one reforged stat at a time, though the reforging of an item can be undone and changed. I think this is a pretty big change. Basically, in the past, your items would be itemized in a certain way, and you might not be happy with the way the stats were allocated, because every item has a budget, and it can be spent in any way, depending on how the game developers want to make the item, based on balance and stuff like that. But now you can pick and choose what stats you want. Let's say you need to get some hit, you can just get some hit. If you don't really like having hit and you want it to be crit, then you can do that, which is pretty nice, I would say. So yeah, you just put that in there, and let's say I want to reduce crit here and add haste, or probably mastery. Let's say I want to add mastery because mastery is a really good new stat, which we'll talk about later. Well, then they charge me 10 gold to switch that. So it's kind of a gold sink in a way for some people who might not have a lot of gold, but it's going to be a pretty nice way to switch some stuff around. Anyways, getting to mastery rating, what that does is, To quote Blizzard, "It's a new stat that will allow players to become better at whatever makes their chosen talent tree cool or unique. It's directly tied to talents, so what you gain from improving the stat is entirely dependent upon your class and the talent spec you choose." I'm going to talk more about mastery rating and specific trees in my next video probably, or maybe later in this video. Not quite sure yet, but I'll cover all the individual specs and what mastery rating gives you. But just for an example, while we're on the topic, if you go into one of these trees, if you're in subtlety as your tree, or assassination or combat, let's see, assassination, you get potent poison. So for being assassination, you get that 20% poison damage increase, and each point of mastery increases that by 2.5. So it just is different in each tree for each class. So mastery is completely dependent on your spec and your class. One thing about 4.0 that's pretty cool is the new glyph system. As you can see, like I was talking about, the UI has changed a lot. For a lot of things, this is obviously completely fresh and new. Previously, players had access to 3 minor glyphs that weren't very powerful and 3 major glyphs that were a lot better, and usually had to make some tough choices. Minor glyphs are still the same, but now you have 3 more glyph slots for what are called prime glyphs. Prime glyphs seem to me to be just as strong as major glyphs, really, but they provide direct increases to abilities. Typically, it seems like flat increases, whereas major glyphs seem to do cool and functional things. For example, increasing the silence effect on your Garrod, or making your gouge, you don't have to face the target doesn't have to be facing you, which is really huge. So yeah, that's how they changed glyphs. In this way, players won't be forced just to get the glyphs that give them a flat increase and pass up all the little cool things. And one of the sickest changes here is that glyphs are now permanently learnable as well. So you learn these glyphs over here, and you can put them in whenever you want. You have to get a reagent called Vanishing Powder, but it's really cheap, and you just, let's say I want to put in a hemoglyph instead of this backstab glyph. I just select it, put it there, cost 1 Vanishing Powder, and it's replaced. And my spellbook is filled with some glyphs, so it's not going to be a pain to have to go to the auction house and, buy all that stuff. It's just a Vanishing Powder reagent, which is like a couple silver or something. Alright, now I'm going to be talking to you about the new talents, abilities, and other changes in 4.0, and give you a little change of scenery here. I'm sure you don't like just sitting watching the walls of some boring brown building in Orgrimmar. Anyways, as far as abilities go, the only new ability we have available at level 80 is called Recuperate. Recuperate is a new finishing move of sorts. It gives you a healing over time buff. The only difference between a normal finishing move is that you can use it on a dead target that has combo points on it still without those combo points going to waste. There are a few new talents that will interact with Recuperate, and the other new abilities that we have access to aren't going to be available until we start leveling up in the expansion. There were some other changes to abilities as well in the expansion, such as Sprint is only 8 seconds long, 1 minute cooldown. So that's one thing. There's a couple little things like that, but nothing is really that relevant. As far as talents go, I'm going to highlight some of the new and interesting things about the trees in an overview fashion, kind of. A few things to note: when you spec now, you have to go 31 points into at least into one tree before other trees become open to you with your remaining 5 points, because you only have 36 points to distribute now. The trees are much less deep than before. There's a lot less talent points to be spent, a lot less stuff to spend it on. Also, for going into each tree, you get access to a defining ability of that tree, such as Mutilate, Blade Flurry, or Shadow Step. Two static benefits as well as a mastery trait that increases with more mastery points, which I talked about before. So you go here and you pull up you're going to spec, and you pull up this tab and you click one of these trees and you start speccing into that tree as your primary tree. So starting out with assassination here, let's look at some of these talents. When you pick assassination as your primary talent tree, you get the Mutilate ability. An increase to your deadly instant poison proc rates, and a 20 energy and 15% melee damage bonus for wielding daggers. Mastery and Assassination gives you 20% poison damage increase, and makes each point of mastery increase your poison damage by an additional 2.5%. Yeah, so I'm just going to talk to you about what's changed really. If things are the same or not very important, I'm just going to gloss over them and talk about some of the more important or big changes. In Tier 1 you see we've got Deadly Momentum. That's not really relevant. It's only a leveling talent. Coup de Grace is just increases Eviscerate and Venom damage, just the old Impetus. Lethality is now a 3-point talent in Tier 1 that gives you 10, 20, 30% based on 3 points increase on the crit damage bonus of combo point generating abilities. So that's something that if you're an assassination, you're probably going to pick up with Coup de Grace as well to get down to the next tree. And then in Tier 2, we have Rootlessness, the same old. Quickening is a merger of Quick Recovery and Fleet-Footed in a way. It takes parts of each of those, the healing increase from Quick Recovery and the movement speed from Fleet-Footed, and merges it into one 2-point talent, kind of way this one of their ways of slimming down the tree. Puncturing Wounds is pretty much the same as before, just the old, the old roots back and improved Backstab into switched over to Puncturing Wounds and affected Mutilate. Blackjack's a new talent. It's completely new. Makes Sap target do 70% less damage for 8 seconds coming out of a Sap. I think this could be pretty good for Arena, actually. I was skeptical at first because, oh, what's that? You don't know when you're going to Sap somebody, where they're going to be, if they're even going to be back to fighting when that happens. But a lot of what I see as assassination doing in a lot of our strategies, you Sap a DPS and start and open on a healer. It happens a lot. Or Sap a DPS and open on the other DPS. So when they're coming out, I think that's pretty strong. If it lets you put up a lot more pressure if your healer has to heal less, because out of that Sap that guy's doing 70% less damage. So I think that could be a pretty good talent. Going to Tier 3, Deadly Brew is pretty much the same, except it's Tier 3 now, but that's pretty irrelevant how deep these things are, because you have to go 31 deep now before you can even do anything in another tree. So it's not like before where the placement of the tree was extremely important. It's still important, but it's not like before where you could grab other stuff from other trees if it was, a shallow enough talent in the tier. So Cold Blood now is different. It's a 2-minute cooldown that provides you 25 energy when you pop it, as well as the guaranteed crit. Vile Poisons is pretty much the same talent in a way. So going to Tier 4, Seal Fate, it's now 2 points instead of 5. It's the same effect, another way of slimming down the tree. Dead Nerves is just the same, but it's been buffed. Tier 5, you can see the old murder icon is now Murderous Intent, and it's nothing like the old boring talent. That's just a flat increase. I think this one's pretty cool, granting you 30 energy for backstabbing enemy below 35% health. One thing that's interesting is the old subtlety talent that gave you a damage increase below 35% health is gone, as far as I know, unless I'm missing something. But this is that mechanic shifted over to the assassination tree, in that you do more damage to something that's lower HP. And this is interesting because if you're running a Mutilate build, you have a reason to backstab in that assassination build. So it's not like before where you just spam Mutilate. Maybe if the guy goes below 35% health, you get that free backstabber. Almost free. So that's Murderous Intent. Master Poison Overkill is pretty much the same. Master Poisoner is now a 1-point talent that increases spell damage to your poison targets by 8%, along with its old effects of poison reduction and consuming no deadly poison stacks when you envenom. So it's only a 1-point talent now, just slimming things down. And what's cool though is that your partners, if you're playing with casters, which you should be if you're if you're a decent person, your casters will be getting that damage increase of their spells. Also your damage will be increased, I'm pretty sure, from your poisons, because that's spell damage as well. And then there's a new improved exposed armor, which makes it so that all your combo points are funded when you expose armor. So you couple that with Relentless Strikes from the subtree, which is in Tier 1, which you'll likely get when you spec. It's a free exposed armor, which is a pretty nice damage increase. Exposed armor might not be worth it before, but when it's free, that's pretty sick. So that's Tier 5, and then Tier 6. We have the old cut to the chase, except it's slimmed down to 3 points instead of 5. Obviously, they've been doing that with a lot of talents. New Venomous Wounds, it's completely new. I think it's a pretty cool talent. It basically makes your bleeds have a chance to do nature damage and restore energy to you. It seems like it's going to be a huge damage increase. Obviously, the armor negating damage of Assassination was always great when people switched over to the Envenom build. And here's more bleed and nature damage. It's going to be doing a ton of damage. And Vendetta is the new capstone ability, a 31-point talent, and basically it's a 2-minute cooldown that you place on somebody. It's no energy, it's 30-yard range, instant, and it just increases the damage dealt to a target by 20% for 30 seconds. And it also gives you vision of them if they're trying to invis or stealth. So it's pretty much a ticket to tunnel vision somebody for 30 seconds and do a shitload or a lot of damage to them. So that's, I guess that's a pretty solid talent for Assassination. Nothing really cool about it, honestly, but because it's not like your partners are doing more to it, so there's no coordination involved. It's just, oh, am I going to destroy this guy now? Yeah, I'm going to destroy him. So you pop that and do more damage, which is pretty much what Assassination has been for a while now. Okay, now getting to the combat tree. If you pick combat as your primary tree, you'll gain Blade Flurry as an ability. Now on a 30-second cooldown, however, it reduces your energy regen while you're hitting 2 targets. Kind of annoying that you get that buff of hitting 2 targets, but your energy regen goes down. I hate when they do that. They give you a caveat to your ability, like, oh, this is good, but here we're gonna nerf it too. It's just but I guess it makes the game a little more complex because it's not just gonna always be good to pop Blade Flurry. You'll also get Vitality, which gives you 15% more attack power and 25% increase to your energy regen. And you also gain a 75% damage increase to your offhand and thrown damage, which will couple nicely with your mastery, which pretty much gives you a sword spec chance on your offhand from your main hand. So your main hand has a chance to proc your offhand damage. So that's just a good sustained damage. Talent, I guess, I don't know, a good mastery, a good trait. So let's look at this tree. In Tier 1, you've got Improved Recuperate, which is probably going to be essential in all builds because it makes it so that your Recuperate ability is just better, but also gives you a damage reduction while it's active. So that's pretty sick. Recuperate's already really strong, and I think people are going to have it up pretty much all the time when they're in combat, depending on their spec. But yeah, that's just really good. I like that talent a lot. Precision's now Tier 1 talent, and Imp Sinister Strike increases the damage dealt by Sinister Strike instead of just reducing the energy cost like it used to. Tier 2 is pretty much the same. These are all old talents. Tier 3, Lightning Reflex is pretty much the same. Revealing Strike is a completely new ability. It's a combo point builder, increases the damage of your next finishing move. Just a way of making the damage cycle a little more intricate. Nothing really crazy about it, but they can also do, new things with talents later on with that. Just makes the tree a little more unique. Reinforced Leather is just armor increase. Combat seems to be all about being able to stay in a fight and ramp up and do your damage and just hit really fast and hard and just fight people toe-to-toe instead of running around stealthing, getting bursts off. It's not really like that. It's just kind of about staying in there and just beating people up, which is kind of cool. I think it'll be really good in certain arena builds and really good in BGs as well. But anyways, Imp Gouge is huge now. It's increases the duration of it more than it did before with 3 points, now only 2 points, and it reduces the energy cost a lot. So that's really strong, and with the new Gouge glyph, that'll be pretty cool. The new Gouge glyph, I'll talk about glyphs later, but just while I'm on the topic, the new Gouge glyph just makes it so you don't have to be facing the person, or the person that you're gouging doesn't have to be facing you, which is really huge. I think I said that before. But anyways, moving on. Tier 4, It's combat potency, it's now a 3-point talent, the same thing pretty much. Blade twisting is pretty much the same thing. Tier 5, Adrenaline Rush also increases attack speed now. Savage Combat and Throwing Spec, pretty much the same. Bandit's Guile in Tier 6 is slowly builds up a buff with your Sinister Strikes and Revealing Strikes, increase damage up to 15%, and then like slowly diminishes over time if you don't refresh it. And if you switch targets, it gets wiped clean and starts anew. Basically, you just get on target and it starts ramping your damage up. Like I was saying earlier, they want you to stay in there and fight people, and it gives you a benefit of going toe-to-toe with others, which is what combat was already like before with some of the things they were doing that they took out that were pretty cool. I think some of the changes they made to this tree aren't that cool. There was a lot of interesting things like before doing damage when you dodged attacks and stuff like that, and taking less damage and stuns. Unique things that made combat really strong in the past, in my opinion. It wasn't that great for 3s all the time unless you were running a cleave in Season 6 with a rep pally. Or Season 7, was it? Season 6, I think. Yeah, Season 6. Regardless, Season 6 combat was great for 2s, and I'm not sure where this is going to fit in the arena scene. I know right now Subtlety is the strong player, but we'll see where combat winds up. Also, Restless Blades, it's just, this is really sick. I think this is probably the best talent in the tree, and definitely one of the coolest. And it makes your finishing moves reduce the cooldown on your Killing Spree, Adrenaline Rush, and Sprint by 2 seconds per combo point. So if you dump a 5-point Eviscerate, your Sprint goes 10 seconds down. All of it goes 10 seconds down. And it's Sprint at only a minute now, an Imp Sprint from the combat tree, breaking snares. You know, you do a couple finishers, you're going to be sprinting again. So it's going to make combat really mobile. And with Killing Spree, I actually don't remember what if the glyph is still the same. I think it is. Let me just check here, which is nice. I can just check this. But no, it's different. So Killing Spree is still always going to have a 2-minute cooldown, but you're going to chip away at that with this new combat talent. And then Killing Spree is still the same ability, 2-minute cooldown, 10-yard range. And just while I'm on it, if people don't know exactly how it works, is when you hit the button of Killing Spree on the target you're on, it checks everything in a 10-yard range around you, and anything that's in the 10-yard range you can jump to for the duration of that Killing Spree. So if you imagine a circle around yourself and that a circle only eclipses one person, you can make it so all the attacks hit that one person. Or if you need to, you can do it in a clump of people and it'll jump around and do AoE damage. You know, you pop Blade Flurry at the same time, it's going to be doing damage to multiple targets and just do a lot of damage. So that's really strong. We'll see how combat ends up. People don't really seem that optimistic as far as I can tell in the community and other arena players I've talked to, but I like it. I've always kind of had a soft spot for it. I think it's a cool tree. So we'll see how that works out. Okay, and the last segment of this video, I'm just going to talk about the same thing, talk about Subtlety. I think Subtlety is by far the strongest PvP tree right now. With the way things are, you're pretty much just obliterating people with your ambushes and eviscerates. You do a lot of damage, and Shadow Dance is just really good right now. So if you pick Sub as your primary tree, you're going to get Shadow Step, which is another reason that Subtlety's crazy good. And you get the Old Master Subtlety talent, which just makes you do more damage once you leave stealth. And then you get Sinister Calling, which is kind of an old thing, but it's different now in that you get 25% agility increase, and the damage bonus of your backstab and hemo are increased by 25%. Your mastery rating is called Executioner, and it's pretty crazy good. It just starts out as a 20% damage increase to all your finishers, which increases by 2.5% per mastery point. So that's going to be really strong. So let's look at this tree. Wait, before we look at the tree, I guess I should fly somewhere else. I would like to make it all exciting and show you me doing crazy things when I'm talking about these talents, but it's much easier just to show you the trees and look at them and save all the cool things for another video where I'm actually using the abilities. But anyways, getting to Subtlety. If you look at Tier 1 here, Night Stalker is pretty much just the old camouflage. Imp Ambush, it's different in that it buffs damage and crit now, and it's in Tier 1. Relentless Strikes has been moved down to 3 points, but it's the same thing. Strong as ever. one of the classic best talents for a rogue ever, as most rogues know. Tier 2, elusiveness the same. Waylay is completely different. Well, it still has the speed debuff, but it makes your target hit slower as well as the old speed debuff. Opportunity, standard increases. Nothing really to talk about in Tier 2. Initiatives pretty much the same there. Less points or whatever, but no point even saying that now. I'm sure you understand now that trees have just kind of been compacted. Less points per benefit. Tier 3 gets pretty interesting because you get energetic recovery, which is makes you recuperate. The new recuperate ticks, giving you health back, but also 12 energy if you have 3 into recuperate, or energetic recovery, which is crazy good. I can't really believe that that's going to stay that strong. That seems like it needs nerfed. That's really strong. It's a lot of extra energy, but we'll see how things pan out. Find Weakness is an old assassination talent, but or name-wise, but it's completely different now. It's gives you 50% armor pen, basically, for 10 seconds after using an opener. Not armor pen, because they took that out, but yeah, it ignores 50% of an enemy's armor. So it's pretty much the same thing. Tier 4 gets a little different. Honor Among Thieves is pretty much the same, except all your party and raid members get a 5% buff to their crit, and the combo point generating effect can only happen every 2 seconds. So that's cool. Enveloping Shadows is a joke, as always. Pre-med is now only 20 seconds. I was actually looking at, when I was building my spec, I was like, I'm going to take out pre-med because, it's just 2 combo points. But I didn't realize that they took it down to a 20-second cooldown, so that's really strong. Every 20 seconds, when you're not going to be stealth all the time, which kind of sucks, but I think it's really strong. Anytime you get a re-stealth, you're pretty much going to have pre-med cheap shots or whatever's. So that's really nice. And anytime you vanish early on or when you use shadow dances, you're going to have pre-med up pretty much. So I think that's a pretty big buff, personally, to pre-med. In Tier 5, the big difference is, we still have Prep and Cheat Death, great talents, obviously. I don't have Cheat Death in this build because there's not really a lot of points to go around in the tree. Kind of have to choose some things. And I currently am not really doing, if I was ever doing competitive arena, I would want Cheat Death because you should never, that's pretty much, that says, hey, I was going to lose the game, but I didn't die because I had Cheat Death, so I'm still in the game. It makes a rogue to kill, pardon my French, but yeah, it's just a great talent. And obviously Prep is the quintessential talent in the tree. Sanguinary Vein is the new one in this tier, which increases. Yeah, Sanguinary Vein just increases damage to bleeding targets, so that's just a good damage buff. One thing that's cool though is with the Hemoglyph, it'll make it so your Hemos automatically put a bleed. I'm thinking about using that, but I'm not sure. Going to the next tree, you'll see Serrated Blades makes it so it's like cut to the chase from the Assassination tree, except for your Ruptures. So your Ruptures are ticking away, and you eviscerate, and it refreshes it to its full duration, which is pretty huge in my opinion, because it's just like a huge damage. It's just a flat damage increase, and you keep that Rupture up, and you do more damage with Sanguinary Vein to bleeding targets. So it's all just a flat damage increase, and then the Hemoglyph isn't really necessary. It might be worth it just for the damage, but it's not that much damage, and I don't think I'm going to get it versus the other glyphs when I have Serrated Blades able to keep up Ruptures for Sanguinary Vein. So I think that's pretty cool. A little bit of interplay between the talents. And I like to use Backstab instead of Hemo anyways. That's why I wouldn't get the Hemoglyph, but I don't know. We'll see how things play out. But Slaughter from the Shadows reduces the cost of Hemo, Fan of Knives, Backstab, and Ambush. So that is just a positive. Interesting that they chose to put Fan of Knives in there as well. I find that quite interesting. And then, of course, the capstone talent of Shadow Dance is the exact same as before. So that's pretty much all the subtlety talents. I think it's a great tree. It's just so much damage and so much utility. And with some of the new glyphs that are available, it's really crazy good, like the new grow glyph, for example, which makes your silence on grow 5 seconds long. And I'll talk about the glyphs in my next video, and I'll show you how some of these specs play out, particular subtlety, because I think that'll be the spec to go. So until then, hope you enjoyed. If you have any comments, suggestions, questions, just contact me or comment or something like that. So have a good one.